Hello again. Welcome back to another exciting update about all the wonderful things I've been doing. Um, I thought I would kick off by talking about the new microphone that I've bought to help create my videos, hopefully with a somewhat better quality of audio than the previous headset that was either too quiet or just too poor quality really during the videos for people to listen to them. I grabbed a quick budget microphone, as you can see in the picture here, which I plan to use for recording things and for also for voice assist when I'm working, as anyone who's watched any of my previous videos knows I quite like to use voice assist when I'm working. So, I'm hoping to do another dev update on my work with AI tools, and we'll see how far I get on this video. I have a feeling it may be a bit of a start-stop and chop it back together later on, as it's quite late in the day today. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin, shall we? So, I thought I would start off on my GitHub page here, as it seems like a good place to begin talking about all the projects I have been working on. I did originally plan to do an update early at the end of February, beginning of March, but things got quite busy and I never quite got round to it, so I'm kind of hoping to roll that into this one as well. Much of the dev work I've been doing this past month or so has been focused really on AI tooling and bits and bobs for using AI-powered IDEs, and also looking at sort of more advanced systems involving MCP servers and agents. As many of you will no doubt know, I'm a big fan of the Google Anti-Gravity IDE. You can register for the Google AI Pro subscription, and that gives you access to a whole load of things, such as the more advanced Google Anti-Gravity models, Gemini free, but also Claude 4.6 Sonic and Haiku, but with the Pro and Ultra subscription you get the million token context for both models apparently, although it does say that on the Pro level it can vary a bit with Claude as to what you get. Now, a bigger context window of course means that it can understand more of your code base and remember more of the tasks it's doing as it works on them. Essentially the bigger the better, really, when it comes to working with these tools. I've also recently been trying the Amazon sort of alternative, which is the kind of successor to Amazon Q, which is also a IDE, very similar in concept to Anti-Gravity, where you have your paired programming window and you can ask it to do tasks and it will build them, as it shows here in this lovely little video on the website for it at kiro.dev there. It differs somewhat in the way it works, obviously. It feels more spec driven. If you've ever used the spec kit for spec driven development, see if I can find its Git repo here. It's a very structured approach to developing software where it will break things down into a plan, tasks and so on through a series of questions with you to drill down before it finally creates a plan to begin working with. And Kira here works very much like that. It will go through almost like a wizard of breaking down your requirements, the design, and finally into tasks, and it will then begin to process them sort of sequentially using whatever model you choose. Amazon offer a range of models. There's an automatic mode where it will choose the best model for the job. It has, I believe, Claude Sonnet 4.5, and a whole range of other ones available in it, many more than you'll find in Anti-Gravity. Arguably 4.6 in Anti-Gravity is a newer and better version of Claude, but that's kind of moot. They both generate similar levels of code output. Anyway, that was a bit of a off subject really, but off the back of using Anti-Gravity and seeing all these kind of posts on Facebook where folks are talking about, I've made the perfect prompt. As you can see here, there are loads of them here, which I've been bookmarking for all sorts of things under the sun. And you will find that somewhere in here there was an example of like a prompt to sort of build software. Oh, there you go. This one was one that I was looking at when I decided to do my own. Essentially, you hand it the prompt that this guy shared and say, build the infrastructure I've described, and it's meant to improve the way these things perform. So I took that idea and made my own, which is the anti-gravity agent prompt protocol here. It features instructions and architectural patterns, as well as a long-term memory system. So it followed the Trinity orchestration idea. I believe if I go in here, I should have that bookmarked as well. See if I can find it anywhere. I had it on Dev 2 the other day. Well, that certainly isn't it. Let me see if I can jump over to LinkedIn and find what I'm talking about. The idea of this, like I said, is that it improves your workflow. One thing I found really good, with it being in a Git repository like this, I can just go into Google Anti-Gravity or an IDE and say implement the long-term memory system from that URL, and it will immediately spin it up. And because I used a bootstrap here with instructions to bootstrap the long-term memory system, it reads that and then goes back through all the previous sort of tasks and discussions you've had on a project and bootstraps the memories, insights, architectural decisions, patterns and lessons from that, and also saves a history of walkthroughs and implementations that Anti-Gravity had created, sort of immediately creating a kind of directory there in the project with a history of key insights, learnings, decisions, and a history of what's been done, which can be very useful for working between tools on a project. Don't mind me just searching back through my history here. Anyway. Here we go. That's the link I was looking for. Took me a while, but here's the article on Dev2 about the Trinity architecture. So, we have the Trinity matrix. So, you have different methods of asking it to do the work, such as the narrative, the workflow, or the logic. Open-ended, specific, and rule-heavy. You use the narrative style when you need a partner. The AI aligns with your why, allowing it to anticipate your needs. The workflow style when you need a builder, which provides a rigid sequence of operations that ensure nothing is skipped in complex multi-step tasks. And the logic style when you need a gatekeeper. It applies a strict given, when, then rule. So I tried to bake that into my prompt here as well. And it came up with its own interpretation of how to do that. And that's sort of the basis of the rules it's meant to use to develop. As you can see, it's told to bootstrap the memory, which means that, like I say, when you ask an IDE to look at this URL and implement it, it immediately creates that repository of information based on previous work. We borrowed the deep agents system prompt and memory system also, the description of that, in generating this to generate an agent MD, which again helps with the memory system. Deep agents is a LangChain AI setup, in case you don't know. Got some examples there. Standalone library, operating as an agent harness, and so on. Skipping right along here. So, this then also has a requirement to implement git commits of major changes, which it calls the ratchet. As it says here, after a successful test run, the agent will automatically perform a git add and git commit without prompting. And also the pulse reset rule, which means after 3 consecutive verification failures, the agent will execute a git reset to revert to the last clean state. The idea is very much, as it notes here, that it acts autonomously and also very quickly to develop systems. So, enough about that and waffling on. The next thing I did earlier in the month was to create the LLM Codex reference vault. And again, these are public Git repos if anyone wants to explore them. The idea of this is to create a knowledge repository in a graph database at Neo4j. Now, you can get a free or a graph database, which has quite a large limit on its use. So I plumbed one of them into my system. And if we jump back here again, the idea is that it's a high-fidelity semantic knowledge graph construction from raw software documentation, freely available online, cheat sheets, and technical books. Now, it was using Docling to convert PDF files into Markdown, following the open search and open RAG philosophy. Which suggests that AIs handle Markdown in RAG databases, such as vector and graph databases, much better when performing searches and using them to support their tasks. And that really was the idea behind the Codex Vault here, that we would have a vast repository of information that we can then share via a MCP server with our IDE or other tools such as agentic systems for it to leverage that. I think the current database that I have here, that I've sort of set up locally myself and ingested things into over the past month, has something like around 40,000 different code blocks and about 2,000 different documents. I took the approach of asking my AI tools to look at my own GitHub repository and identify all of the major sort of languages that I work with a view to then filling the database with information that would be pertinent to my tech stack that I work with. So you can see it's done DevOps, it's done LangChain, it's done NA10, which is a unique case. I had about 2,000 NA10 workflows locally from various public repositories, and the logic behind ingesting that is that they represent structured workflows for business services, APIs, and so on, with a logic that the AI tools would apply to whatever language they're working with. Say it needs to understand how to format and post something to LinkedIn, there would be an NA10 workflow for that, and it can take that workflow and then go, okay, I will convert this into C#, whatever tech stack we're using. But there's more in there than that. There are a great many different things that it ingested. Python, PHP, C#, like I mentioned, just all manner of things, from anything you can think of, really. I could dig out a list, but at this point I'll probably just move along. So the flip side of that was to obviously then create my own MCP server with semantic search. If you sort of read down here, native MCP integration, it talks about how to set it up, and eventually it hits on the point that you can include its own MCP server into your IDE. And it will use that whenever it comes to a certain point in development and it goes, how do I do this? It will then consult the graph database and find examples. So it sort of supercharges your development. And the same for agentic systems. They can reference these things if they're writing code or developing some kind of logic. So what happened next? Well, the next one that I decided to work on this month was a smart MCP proxy server that lazy loads relevant tools and MCP servers based on the project context, keeping the total number of tools within recommended limits. Now, anyone who's worked with MCP tools, if you don't understand what MCP is, think of it as an API for LLMs and AIs to consume that speaks a language they can understand. Your IDE or AI tools will at some point decide it needs to talk to GitHub or Jira or whatever. And if it has an MCP tool available in its configuration, it can then call that MCP tool and say, list all the tools that you have available and tell me what you can do. And then it will create a plan accordingly with those tools to carry out what it needs to do. Now, these are traditionally statically added in a JSON configuration file, for example, and in things like anti-gravity, it recommends no more than 50 tools loaded. Each server will have a varying amount of tools available. It can be 5 tools, it can be 10, it could be 70. So obviously you can't put too many in there if you want to keep it underneath 50 tools. It will allow you to put more. But the reason it says to keep them below that is because every tool you add gets injected into the system prompt. And what happens if you load lots and lots, and there are lots, somewhere here I have the MCP list on GitHub, that someone has happily compiled, and you can see that the list just goes on and on and on. There are hundreds of these things, and if you tried to add them all, or even just those that were relevant to you, you will very quickly fill the system prompt up with all the configuration for them. It's that injection of these tools that tells it what it can do from your config. And what happens, I believe, when I was running it through Google Notebook LM, it described it as like having a world-class chef in a kitchen where you put every possible appliance and tool under the sun in front of them, all over the table and shelves, so they could never find the thing that they want, which was its analogy. Essentially, your AI tooling, LLM, loses focus and gets lost in the middle. Again, if you've worked with these things before, as you know, when you're writing a prompt, often the initial part of the prompt carries more weight than the later. So the more information you force into this thing, and the bigger you make it, the kind of worse your tools get, as a general rule here, shall we say, which kind of gives you then the idea behind this lazy loading dynamic MCP proxy tool. Now, this one works with a handshake, so that your IDE or LLM or whatever will initially contact the dynamic proxy server, and it will give it context of the task with a description and the tech stack. Now, in that handshake, the MCP proxy server then looks at a catalog of available MCP tools that it has here. And again, this was pulled from that MCP Git repo there, and it will decide which ones are the best match for the task description and the tech stack. It then scores the catalog entries, chooses the top 5 and activates them. So this means that your IDE or whatever has a dynamically changing list of tools as the task changes that it can reference to do its job. And again, Google Notebook LM described it as having a 50 slot tool belt that whenever you need the right tool, switches to that tool. And as you work on a project and a task changes and the AI finds that it needs one of these other tools, it then requests it. There are endpoints in here to list the active ones, list the available ones, and to request one to be activated, and also to deactivate one when it's no longer needed. Now, the system uses the least recently used idea to also remove active MCP servers. Now, this comes from traditional computing science backgrounds, but essentially, when you hit that limit of around 50 and you try and start up another tool, or your AI does, the MCP proxy server will go, okay, well, I need 10 more tools. What are the 10 least recently used? And it will deactivate them in order to activate the new ones, but stay within the limit. It's smarter than that, as we said, because the system has this deactivation available and activation available here. In regular use, your AI model will be activating and deactivating things as well as the tasks change, because it knows it doesn't need them. Beyond that, there is also further systems to allow hot swapping of MCP servers as well. You can literally download one, drop it in the folder, and the smart proxy server will detect that you have a new MCP tool available, update its list, and the next time the AI requests a tool, that one is available to it live. So it becomes instantly much better than that static list. Not only are you not overwhelming your AI or IDE with too many tools, you're only giving it the tools it needs when it asks for them, which means that it doesn't lose focus, it doesn't get lost, you don't flood the system prompt with too many. It's also dynamically loading and changing them based on the task and the tech stack you're working with, so it's more relevant. But also, there's then this possibility to add what it needs and to hot load them in. Now, with the traditional config JSON, that's static, you cannot hot load an MCP server into the mix. You are stuck with what was defined on startup. Now, as you might have realized, being able to hot swap them in opens up some interesting opportunities, because in an agentic, autonomous AI setup, the tools themselves can decide what they need to load in, download them, and then use them, and it becomes a lot more powerful. Anyway, I will stop blowing my own trumpet about that. But it felt to me that this month has very much been about building the tools and the rails to develop agentic systems, and these three sort of individual projects have very much been the core of that. So, what else have we been doing? Well, obviously, aside from this infrastructure, I've been working on other projects. One of them was to revive an old, I believe it was one of those interview sort of type projects for a to-do list. So now, using AI, I have enhanced it quite drastically, adding in AI features to generate subtasks and all manner of things really to my to-do list, which you can see here, where you can add descriptions and subtasks, you can chop and change between things that are in progress and not. There's a goal for higher level goals, and a daily planner for what you need to do across your day. So this was just a very helpful tool for myself, really, to try and keep a track on ideas I've had and projects I'm working on, and what I will need to do across a day to support them. Because, I don't know, if you're like me, you'll probably have lots of ideas at random times of the day, and if you don't write them down, you will forget them all. And it's the same with working. If you don't sort of initially plan all the tasks you need to do, you occasionally will miss some. So it is handy in that sense. So, what else? Well, continuing my social media setup, and I do believe this had a different password. Bear with me. I created a LinkedIn poster. Which automatically scours RSS feeds of about 30 leading websites for content for me to review and publish. I did save the password for this somewhere. It may be we have to come back to that in a minute. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to show you that today, but it works really well. This was another system I developed for my own personal use. Now, the idea of this was that I find a lot of posts with prompts and ideas and software on various social media websites. And what I wanted to do was have somewhere that I could save these things with a link to where I'd found them, a description, and tags that are relevant to them. So it's just a simple collection. I've called it a prompt library, but really it's a collection of tools and links to those tools, or posts really. There's one of those prompts on how to develop the superpowers in your IDE. There's one for a job hunting system. Some of them come from Twitter. As you can see here, you can click and you get to see the post. On the subject of Twitter, I upped my game a bit with my Twitter account and added a whole load of AI folks to my Happy Monkey AI account here to follow them and to try and better keep ahead of what's going on. There was one here today that I thought was quite interesting. This guy here has created Civilization, but with AI running behind it, so that the diplomacy is sort of powered by an LLM and live with a whole load of other features. So kind of interesting stuff goes on here. There's a lot at the moment of hardware as well. Like this guy has put a little Claude bot supposedly on a watch. I don't know if that's true. There was one the other day where they've been creating these little
Can you tell me a joke?
Pi X Claude bots, which are quite fun. So, following some of these people online, it's worth doing. There are one or two big name people here who, have some vast GitHub repositories. I believe there's a link somewhere to their website. But they have many, many projects. Here we go. You can see here there's autonomous agent setups, all sorts within their repositories that are very much worth looking at, to be honest. So, if we're talking about games, some of you might remember MRPG, my game that I developed a while ago using AI tools, which was a simple RPG in the style of Zelda, where you can wander around the world. I'm going to drop the volume of this because it will probably play amazingly loud on the video. But this was MRPG. I've revisited it a few times and added a whole host of extra features. And sort of end of February really I stopped kind of developing this to work on other things, trying to switch my focus initially onto things that might earn some money and actually be more business related, and then later looking at those AI rails that I was talking about at the start of the video. If we jog back to town, you can recruit an ally. Anyway, loads of fun. There's even shops to buy health potions and all sorts. Wonderful. So, off the back of that, I decided to make a game called Realms, which is similar in concept, but this was intended to be an RTS. since it struck me that the game might lend itself well. So we have a zoom in, zoom out, and the camera is free to move around the map. And you can place buildings, and eventually people come out and start gathering resources. The graphics are pretty terrible, I'll give you at the moment. You know, it's early days really with this one. Once you've started getting a bit of materials, you can start building things like defense towers, and it's worth building defense towers. This has gone through many iterations, believe it or not, despite the rather rough look. Let's get some stone, shall we? It took a while to add various features, and also the mobs initially were quite basic in their attacks. They've been advanced quite a lot from the early days. Rather than just simply swarming, they will patrol and attack and are generally that little bit smarter now. There's a level in that as you build different sort of tools, you unlock different buildings. So we can now build a castle. Not quite actually, we need a little bit more wood than we've got. Let's demolish some of these guys. Then we use wood to repair, so you kind of need to make sure that you have enough of the stuff. Ah, he's attacking my building. There we go, got him. You need 100 wood to build the castle, so we need to up our game a little bit. These guys are doing a good job of destroying everything here at the moment. Usually I'm a bit better than this at playing it. Anyway, we'll carry on. I'm sure we'll get there eventually. Chuck out a few more woodcutters and try and cut down a few more trees. And there we go. Finally we've got enough for the castle. Now with your attack buildings like this, you can specify the rally points. So if we chuck out a house, you need a house to build more troops, and we want more troops because we need to defend our house. Stone towers, which are these smaller ones, are tougher and can be helpful in defending things I've found in the past. Throw a few of them down here. Right, now we've got them. We can pop out an archery range. When we get some more wood. There we go. We can order our troops around to defend our castle. And like the other ones, we can order the archers to move out. Let's throw down some stockpiles. And in order to keep those pesky critters out, you can also build walls. So it's a fairly fully fledged kind of RTS in many ways, even if it does look incredibly basic. Tree planters here have one use, that is, they plant trees, as you can see with these ones that are appearing here. This is what I sort of spend my time doing when I'm bored in the evenings and feeling a bit burnt out. Just throw the AI at developing games. So the idea of the tree planters is that they renew your wood resource, obviously, otherwise the map would run out of anything to build, and you wouldn't be able to build very much. So let's throw down some walls. Busy repairing stuff again. Anyway, endless entertainment. You can also turn off or on all labels to hide them. But one of the things I found with all these sort of game developments really is that the AI is not very good at making these sprites. As you can see here, we've got little white bits on the edges, and some of them are just not very good, not very relevant for what they're designed for, really. So this was then my more recent dev, which is to add a sprite editor. So all the assets in the game can be loaded here and edited. You can draw on them. If we find, say, the castle, and load that in. If we want to know where the white pixels are, you can use a mask to show you. You can see behind there, there's some. And again, this is still very much a work in progress from today. But you can zoom in and you can say, okay, give me transparency, and you can remove those white pixels. The idea is that you can edit the sprites, improve them in the game itself, and when you hit save, they are hot loaded back into the game. I won't save it for the time being. Now, in the code, I designed that so that not only does it hot load it, but it saves alterations into a separate dev folder with the original assets not being overwritten, which the idea would mean that you can then keep the original base assets in case you make a mistake, and the new ones you draw are loaded if they are present. They are named after the original asset, so the system kind of intelligently loads the new ones you've made. And like I say, it hot loads them into the game, so it will, after you finish and you hit save, it should change live in the game itself. The idea ultimately is to be able to go there, choose something like these towers, redraw them to look like an actual wooden tower and not the old wizard's tower from MRPG here. But also then to add a frame to animate it, which is on the roadmap to do, so that you could clone this image, make a second one, change its look slightly, clone it again, change it again, and eventually you'd have an animation that when you hit save, it would start animating in game. Like I say, we're a way away from that. Maybe after another month I'll have that. But all of these individual sprites and mobs here have animation sequences that when they move and animate like this. The gatherers and even the mobs have little walking animations and stuff as well. The trees sway. So it's kind of a feature of the game to have it, and it feels like the buildings should too. Anyway, that's probably enough about realms. Shall we move on to something else? This was my effort at an AI page builder. I referenced an existing set of scripts here and some old work that I worked on to build a page builder, and came up with this system here where you can go in and you can ask it to build what you want. Now, my previous efforts at this have been largely unsuccessful, and this was much more successful. although it still, again, has a way to go to be truly useful. You can see here it kind of chopped up a page for me based on requirements, but it's still a bit sort of rough looking. But one day I might get that. This was the original version of that sprite editor I made, where you can draw. This is online at sprite.stephenphillips.co.uk. You can choose your colour and build your own sprites if you want to have fun doing that, and then just save them out. The initial incarnation of this had AI tools as well to analyse images and then create pixel art from them, but I didn't put that onto the website as I didn't want people spamming my models. Yes. So if we go back for a second to the agentic website systems, I believe there was one here that I was looking at. So with the Dynamic Proxy setup, there are some existing ones out there that don't work quite in the same fashion as mine, but I used as a basis for development, such as this one here, which is a real-time guardrail monitoring and dynamic proxy, and so on, which helped me architect it, feeding these documents into my editor to build the systems that I wanted. And there's an article here again, how to build a dynamic proxy, and so on, which is where the idea really came from. So, skipping right along. What else do we have to talk about? I have a feeling this one is not running at the moment, so we'll just skip past that as well. I guess we're kind of coming towards the end of this video. I thought I would share this repository very quickly as well. This one, Agent Factory MCP, is very simply an MCP server for AI agent tools that automatically discovers the AI CLI tools you have installed. Think OpenCode, Ada, Gemini CLI, as it says here, Quen, Alarma, and so on. It will find all those tools and it will spin up a stack with whatever system you're using as the orchestrator, be it your IDE or some kind of AI model, and it will use those tools it's discovered as sub-agents to carry out tasks you give it, with session management and so much more, really. Now obviously, unless you've been sleeping, you would realise that this is a very powerful setup. As you have here, your client can now orchestrate a full kind of software development stack to carry out tasks you request of it, without you needing to develop an advanced system to do so. You've probably seen many of these web dashboards for agentic models and so on for working on tasks. I've even been developing my own recently. It's still not quite ready for the prime time. Let me see if I can spin that up as well on here. That one there. Just working off the screen for a second to launch this project. Should in a moment start running. I upgraded my main web server to 32 gigs the other day, as my desktop has, and this dev server, I believe, has 16 gigabytes in it as well. so that I can throw quite a lot of work at it. This one is using 883. I might need to share. See if that does it. Hey, look at that. So the idea of this is that you can add a project via a pop-up here, give it a description, give the project a slug, should we call it test project, the test, this is a simple test project to create a HTML calculator. There we go. There's a test product. And then within there, you can create agents. They're templated, such as our planning agent. You give it a name. Let's call him Bob. And that should be all it needs to go. This was designed with specific templates in the file system that can be overridden with user directions, and it will initialize an agent to carry out tasks. You can create tasks, such as generating detailed documentation in a plan, and also then assign them and get to work on it. So, kind of powerful when it works. It's still in development at the moment. But, as I said, using something like the agent factory, you have that at your disposal in the CLI, for example, to a certain extent. So, again, very powerful. Keymaster here, I mentioned briefly because that was another project relating to the infrastructure side of things that I was looking at, which was to create a centralized storage for credentials that AI tools could use with a suitable level of security using industry standard security, IP whitelisting and so on, to lock them down. The idea being that then my various agent systems could request access to services they need, and I only have to update them in one place, which is still, again, in development. That one was just a list of ready-made agents for every kind of task under the sun, which is helpful if you're developing agentic systems. So, I guess I should wrap this up, really. Scrapling here, I have been looking at using recently. It's an adaptive web scraping framework. I've been looking to use this for all sorts of data mining purposes. It can bypass anti-bot systems like Cloudflare, and so is very good for grabbing information, for example, to load into a codex vault. In my case, I've been using it to scrape social media platforms as well, in order to create data feeds relevant to what I'm doing. Yes, I also changed my CV into Markdown so that Google could iterate over it, which I found very useful. You can connect all your knowledge base sources about work you've done, point it at your GitHub, and it can then adaptively update and edit your CV and covering letter, which works very well with that job agent that I mentioned earlier on, where you can have it automatically sort of find matching jobs for you to apply to. Not that I've been looking. This is a set of albums I created using my AI software system for making music, Songbird, which has been actively developed over the past few months. V2 we moved to code, we added album mode, poetry mode, where it sort of elevates its lyricism for better songwriting. And it has a number of agents for musical direction, lyric writing, artist persona, background and history, and it will create bands, albums with a narrative arc. There's a narrative agent. It references Perplexity for information and background to aid in its tasks, and uses Comfy UI and A-Step 1.5 to actually generate the audio and lyrics. And it creates albums much like these here.
In twilight hush, where shadows play, I recall your whispered promise, that fateful night, a rose left blooming like a ghost in my way, forever lost in the stormy.
That's enough of that. As you can see, it's very good at making lyrics and songs. This was a notebook system that I made that I could feed various potential tasks and bits of information to, and have it kind of iterate on, with the idea that it will eventually come out with solutions that you can then build, which was moderately successful. Yeah, so I think that brings me to the end of this video, really. I've been playing as well with machine learning. I set up a machine learning lab and have been training an LM model for my own purposes, and have a nice little stack set up for that, which maybe I can show another time. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers much of the work that I've been doing over the past couple of months. And I guess I'll wrap it up there and say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the update. Goodbye.